TBRC for kids.
Paul and his team were getting bigger because many people started believing in Jesus.
Incredible.
Amazing miracles were also happening, and many people were excited.
Great.
But not everyone liked what was going on. Trouble was about to start.
Trouble? How? By who?
Find out in this video, Trouble in the City.
Truly, not everyone was happy. A silversmith named Demetrius made silver statues of a goddess, called Artemis.
So what happened?
When people began following Jesus, they stopped buying his idols.
Demetrius shouted to the other craftsmen, "If people stop worshipping Artemis, we'll lose our jobs."
Soon, the city was in chaos. A huge crowd filled the theater, shouting, "Great is Artemis of Ephesus!" over and over.
Paul wanted to go and speak to them, but his friends held him back. It was too dangerous. The shouting grew louder, and people didn't even know why they were angry anymore.
That was serious.
Finally, a wise city clerk calmed everyone down. "People of Ephesus," he said, "if Paul and his friends have done something wrong, take it to court. But don't start a riot."
Slowly, the crowd quieted down, and everyone went home.
After the uproar ended, Paul gathered the believers. They prayed, hugged, and encouraged one another.
Even though there had been danger, God's message had spread powerfully.
Yes, the city of Ephesus would never be the same again.
God's power is greater than any magic, idols, or false gods. When we believe in Jesus, we have the strongest power of all. The power of God's Spirit living in us.
After the big uproar in Ephesus, Paul decided it was time to move on. He hugged his friends tightly. "Stay strong and keep following Jesus," said Paul.
Paul began another adventure, traveling through towns and cities to encourage believers.
He visited Macedonia and Greece, sharing about God's love everywhere he went. Crowd gathered, hearts were changed, and churches grew stronger.
But one day, Paul discovered that some people were planning to hurt him. So, instead of sailing directly to Syria, he changed his route and went back through Macedonia again.
Paul wasn't alone. He traveled with several good friends.
Friends like who?
Sopater, Aristarchus, Secundus, Gaius, Timothy, Tychicus, and Trophimus.
Together, they were like a superhero team for Jesus. Strong, brave, and ready for anything.
They journeyed by land and sea, stopping in cities like Troas, where something amazing and a bit funny happened.
What happened?
It was Sunday evening in Troas. The believers gathered in an upstairs room, filled with warm glow of oil lamps. Everyone was excited to see Paul. And he had so much to share before leaving the next day.
Paul started talking. And kept talking. And talking.
One young man named Eutychus sat by the window. He tried to stay awake, but his eyes grew heavy. The lamps flickered, the room grew warm, and... oops! Eutychus fell asleep.
Suddenly, he slipped from the window and fell 3 stories down. The room exploded with shouts. Everyone rushed outside. "He is dead," someone cried.
Paul quickly knelt beside the boy, prayed, and said, "Don't worry. He's alive."
And just like that, Eutychus opened his eyes. God had brought him back to life.
After the miracle, everyone went back upstairs, amazed and full of joy.
Paul broke bread, shared communion, and kept talking with them until morning. No one wanted the night to end. It was a night they'd never forget.
Then came the farewell at Miletus.
Later, Paul continued his journey. When he reached the city of Miletus, he sent for the church leaders from Ephesus to meet him there.
When they arrived, Paul spoke from his heart. "You know how I have served the Lord with tears and trials," he said. "I have told everyone about Jesus, both Jews and Greeks. But now the Holy Spirit tells me that in every city, prison and trouble await me.
The leaders listened with tears in their eyes. They knew Paul had risked everything for Jesus.
But I count my life worth nothing unless I finish the work Jesus gave me, to tell everyone the good news of God's grace.
Then Paul knelt and prayed with them all. Everyone began to cry. They hugged him tightly, sad because he said they would never see him again.
After the emotional farewell, Paul boarded a ship and waved one last goodbye.
The wind caught the sails, and soon he was just a small figure on the horizon.
The believers watched until he disappeared, their hearts full of love, faith, and courage.
They would never forget the man who had taught them so much about Jesus.
Had Paul finished his adventure?
No.
He is now heading to Jerusalem, for a brand new adventure.
The wind whooshed through the sails, as Paul and his friends waved goodbye to the believers in Miletus. Their ship rocked gently across the blue sea, heading toward new cities and new adventures.
Paul stood on the deck, looking out at the waves. His heart was brave, but he knew that trouble might be waiting in Jerusalem.
Was he afraid?
No, that didn't stop him. He was determined to follow God's plan.
They sailed from Kos, then to Rhodes, then to Patar. Everywhere they went, people greeted them warmly.
At Tyre, they stayed for 7 days, spending time with the believers there.
During their stay in Tyre, the believers prayed and talked with Paul every day.
Talked to Paul about what?
Trouble looming.
But soon, they had a serious message for him.
What was the message about?
Paul, they said with worried faces, the Holy Spirit has shown us that danger is waiting for you in Jerusalem. Please don't go.
Paul smiled gently. Thank you, my friends. But I must do what God has called me to do, even if it's hard.
When it was time to leave, everyone, men, women, and children, walked with Paul to the shore.
What did they do?
They knelt down right there, on the sand, and prayed together. The waves lapped at their feet, and tears filled their eyes as they said goodbye.
After leaving Tyre, Paul and his friends sailed to Caesarea, where they stayed at the home of Philip the evangelist, one of the 7 helpers chosen long ago.
What about him?
Philip had 4 daughters who loved God and could speak his messages.
While Paul was there, a prophet named Agabus arrived from Judea. He walked up to Paul, took Paul's belt, and tied his own hands and feet with it.
Then, he said, the Holy Spirit says, "This is what will happen to the man who owns this belt. He will be tied up by the Jewish leaders and handed over to the Romans."
Everyone gasped. Paul, please don't go to Jerusalem. His friends begged, tears streaming down their faces.
But Paul's eyes were steady. "Why are you crying?" he said gently. "I'm ready not only to be tied up, but even to die for Jesus, if that's what it takes."
When they saw Paul's courage, they said quietly, "Let the Lord's will be done."
Paul's friends packed their bags and traveled with him to Jerusalem. Along the way, they stopped to stay with a believer named Manson, one of the first followers of Jesus.
The closer they got to Jerusalem, the more excited Paul felt. The city's golden roofs glowed in the sunlight, and he could hear the sound of music and busy markets.
When they finally arrived, the believers welcomed them with open arms and joyful hearts.
"Welcome, Brother Paul," they shouted. "We're so glad you're here."
Paul smiled. He thought his long adventures were finally over. But was the prophet right about what would happen to him?
Let's find out in our next video. Paul in big trouble in Jerusalem.